Hello, and welcome to the Monster Painter. This time I take on a big sack of terrain. So I found this sack of tabletop fun on the Facebook Marketplace and paid for it with a single pink portrait of Lester B. Pearson. I think getting a pile of tabletop terrain in an old Michaels bag tells a bit of a story. Now let's dig in, and it looks like I have acquired a decent pile of old Middle-earth strategy battles terrain. Not in the best condition, but with some effort, I think they will look great. Time for a closer look. The seller told me this lot of terrain was used by the local Middle-earth Strategy Battles Club back in the game's heyday and has been the setting of many an epic battle. Most of it is very solidly glued together, although there are some broken parts and it will need some repair. All the pieces in this set have been given a quick, rough and ready paint job. Totally serviceable, but not very exciting. Like all Games Workshop terrain, they are well designed and beautifully modeled pieces, and with some work, I think I can really make these ruined remnants of Rohan really sing. So, let's get started. So it looks like all these pieces had been glued onto a masonite board and then at some point unceremoniously ripped off, leaving behind ugly yellowed glue. Fortunately, this is nothing the old utility knife can't handle. It just has to be scraped off, and as always, when using the utility knife, be mindful, patient, and cautious. These ruins are from Rohan, not Mordor, and so they do not require a blood sacrifice for their reclamation. Well, that process left the models even grubbier than they already were. As a result, I will be turning to one of the greatest technologies of the modern era, clean running water and a bit of dish detergent to get these things ready for the next step, the regluing and the repair. Alright, and it's back to the utility knife. I will be scraping off the old glue and paint along the spots where I plan to reglue the models. I will also use the utility knife to score up those same spots. This will give the plastic glue a good surface to grab a hold of and lead to a nice, solid bond. And now, at last, on to the repainting. I am planning to give these ruins two different colors of stonework. So to this end, I am applying a dark brown wash of raw umber to the pillars and decorative elements of the ruins. This will highlight these elements and add some visual interest to the models. Next, I'm going to apply a dry brush layer of unbleached titanium, a light creamy color, to all the same elements. This will bring these elements back in line with the overall color scheme, as well as help bring out the textures and the forms of all that lovely decorative stonework on these worn out old ruins. Now I'm going to add a wash of ivory black to all the remaining parts of the model. The white of the original paint job is really quite bright in spots and overall has a chalky flat quality to it that I don't care for. The black wash will soften the bright highlights and even out the surface overall. As well, a black wash always helps to weather a model, making it look old and dirty, which is what we're going for with these old, dirty ruins. I will follow up the wash with a dry brush layer of light gray, a mixture of Payne's gray and titanium white. This will lighten up these areas and bring out the really nice textures that these models have. This set of ruins is really starting to come together at this point. The finish line is in sight. On to the penultimate step of the project, dealing with the wooden floors that some of the models have. I will simply dry brush on a layer of taupey light gray in order to weather that old wood. Off screen, I will add a black wash to these wooden floors to further age them and bring out the textures. I will also use the same black wash on some of the decorative stone elements that got overworked in previous steps. And with that done, it is on to the final part of the project. And now the final step, which is the final step in most of my terrain projects, a gradated wash of sap green along the base of the model and any other spots I think that might get mossy. This helps age the model, it helps bring the model into an environment, and because this is how I finish most of my terrain, it integrates the model with my eclectic collection. Now, I have been calling these the Ruins of Rohan, but after the faintest bit of research, I discovered these terrain pieces are in fact from a set with the more generic name, the Ruins of Middle-earth. And I must say the architecture of Middle-earth is quite well represented by these fragments. They have a very Romanesque feel to me, which I quite like. I admit I find it's sort of amusing that the quasi-medieval settings of most fantasy games are littered with Gothic ruins. I mean, in the medieval times, there were no Gothic ruins. The Gothic buildings were all shiny and new back then, and often had outlandish bright paint jobs, and looked quite different than the scenes of in Gothic romances that came later and effectively filled our imaginations. For a medieval setting, ruins in the earlier Romanesque post-classical style make a lot more sense. On the other hand, asserting this opinion on gameplay is very pretentious and totally unfun. After all, these settings are called quasi-medieval for very good reasons. I am a big fan of the models that came out of Games Workshop's Middle-earth strategy battle game, and I think it's the best stuff GW has produced this century. At its best, it is naturalistic, heroic, and fantastical all at the same time, and that's no small feat. These terrain pieces are quite excellent. While depicting relatively decorative architecture, they are fairly plain compared to the Rococo outlandishness of Warhammer terrain, where there can never be enough details in the cluttered, nihilist ultra-Gothic house style that dominates 40k and Age of Sigmar. The other reason I prefer this line is there is not a single skull to be found on any of these ruins. It is a refreshing contrast to the skull-laden architecture of the 40th millennium. Yep, this stripped-down naturalistic aesthetic of these ruins is lovely, and it makes them much more versatile. They would make sense in a historic game like Saga, and they don't drag all that iconographic baggage around, making them fit more comfortably into my favorite game, Frostgrave. And Frostgrave is exactly where all these ruins are going to end up. They really are perfect for that game of terrain-cluttered treasure hunting. I can almost imagine these ruins forming a district in Old Felstad called Little Rohan, a part of the Frozen City where the aesthetic leans hard into the feel of Lord of the Rings. Anyway, there is plenty of tactical interest with these terrain pieces, and they will be a welcome addition to the haunted ruins. And now, a word from our sponsor.
C is for cookie. That's good enough for me. C is for cookie. That's good enough for me. Cookie, cookie, cookie starts with C. Me love cookie. What else can me say?
Today's episode is sponsored by the letter C.
All right, enough with the snacks. It's time for a monster fight. Tonight's match pits these hellhounds.
A couple of pinkies from the 2004 Doom board game
against these mighty mushrooms.
A pair of repainted, pre-painted miniatures by Wizards of the Coast, also from 2004.
Let the fight commence!
Oh my, I didn't expect to have to choke down a result like that. Well, let's see how it plays out in the ring.
There
there you have it. In a clear lesson that you should watch what you eat, the Myconid guards have been victorious. I'm gonna try to find some tabletop fun in this bag of thrift store junk.
Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell. Ring the bell!
Watching Les the Monster Painter.